The staff of the Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com join WVUA 23's Jen Chapman at Will Hagen's Grill and Tap Room for an in-depth analysis of the Crimson Tide and SEC football. This is Tide Sports TV.
Welcome into Tide Sports TV, live at Will Hagen's every Monday night at 6 p.m. The staff of the Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com in conjunction with WVUA 23 News. Starting things off, we go to the big picture brought to you by the Soup Store. Cecil Hurt is out this week. He is now on the road traveling to watch Alabama men's basketball take on Dayton. So in his place, we've got Tommy Dees. Tommy, you ready?
I am.
Well, let's start with Alabama beats Mississippi State 31-6. What was the biggest thing you took away from the game?
Well, it had to be the defense and the defensive front once again. We knew they could get after the quarterback, but it seems to be a different guy every week. Jonathan Allen this week, A'Shawn Robinson the week before, and we knew they could sack the quarterback. I don't think I knew they could sack a quarterback 9 times in SEC play. The other thing we learned is two things about the offense is I think we already kind of knew, but they're inconsistent. They were slow starting in this time, and they didn't put together sustained drives. But on the other hand, they are a big play offense, or at least have that capability with Derrick Henry, with Calvin Ridley. Made a big play in special teams with Cyrus Jones returning a kick. So one of the things I thought Alabama needed to produce better in the second half of the season was big plays, and I saw that. But they've got to be able to drive the ball also. Now,
with you mentioning the offense getting a slow start, how important is it that this defense does not allow the opponent to get on the board?
Well, I mean, it's always important if the other team doesn't score. You're probably going to win. But I thought the goal line stand was pretty crucial early because it kept the crowd from really getting super hyped. And it was loud there. The cowbells were ringing. And the loudspeaker's louder than the cowbells for some reason. But it was very, very loud, and they didn't get a chance to get super hyper because they didn't take the early lead, and the defense kept that from happening. You know, Alabama's not going to give up a lot on that defense. There'll be a big play here or there. It's real hard to sustain a drive and finish one against this defense.
So one weakness already been identified as Alabama's offense getting off to a slow start. The defense doesn't seem to have a lot of weakness this year. So what is it going to take for a team to beat Alabama?
I think the first thing is any team that plays Alabama is going to need a good run defense because Derrick Henry, if you can stop him and keep him bottled up, and Mississippi State did for a time, then Alabama's going to have to do what maybe not its best game or what it's not most comfortable doing and rely on the passing game. And the other thing is that a team, I think, has to be able to produce big plays and probably needs a really good quarterback, and it probably doesn't hurt if it's a mobile quarterback. Those are the kind of things that have given Alabama problems in the past. I don't think there are any, and certainly not many teams, that can take the ball and drive it down the field on Alabama consistently. They're going to need to hit a play here and a play there, and that's going to take a good quarterback and probably one who can buy himself a little bit of time and then go downfield. And, you know, Dak Prescott didn't have a bad game. He got put on the ground a lot. He got hit. He got beat up. Still got 300 passing yards, which says that Alabama can be passed on. So that's kind of the way, and I think that team probably needs Alabama to make some turnovers and probably needs some luck.
And Coach Saban brought up today that the Charleston Southern quarterback, their next opponent, is a mobile quarterback. Is this game actually a threat? Is this something that fans need to be concerned about?
I don't think fans need to be concerned about it, but I don't think you take anybody lightly. They're a top 10 team in the football championship subdivision, what used to be 1AA. They're going to have a few athletes. They're going to be able to make plays. Teams from that level have pulled occasional upsets. Jacksonville State almost beat Auburn this year. Everybody remembers Appalachian State against Michigan. You don't want to be that team that ends up on the wrong side of one of those. And I don't think Alabama needs style points here, but Alabama doesn't need to be sitting around up 13-10 with 2 minutes left and the game on the line. Because the eye test is part of what's used in these rankings, whether they admit it or not. And I think Alabama should be able to handle business, but I don't expect it to be 42-0 at the end of the first quarter.
And not even just losing to a team like that in November. It's not just a game on the line. This is the season on the line. If they were to, be lightly on this, what teams do have potential in the national picture should they meet Alabama later on in the road, which ones have potential that could pose a big threat to Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, Auburn shouldn't. But then I look at a game like Texas and Oklahoma, and I know what rivalry games are like and what they can be, and you get the superhuman effort, and if you open the door for your rival, they can make something happen. But I don't think Auburn has the ingredients of what it takes to beat Alabama. Florida's defense will give Alabama, if Alabama gets to the SEC title game, they'll keep them in it for a while. They've got a very good defense, but I don't think they have an offense that can challenge Alabama. Certainly not a quarterback. So then you're talking what playoff teams or potential playoff teams. And I think Ohio State, which we saw last year, can man up man-to-man with Alabama and get physical and can run the ball. We'll see if they can run. Maybe we'll see if they can run the ball on Alabama. I think Clemson has that kind of big play potential and a very good defense that would give Alabama some trouble. Maybe Oklahoma, but those seem to be the ones to me that have the athletes that match up, that are still in the picture.
And the next 2 weeks in the big picture of things, so big with a lot of teams playing their rival, their number one rival, especially that last week. So the whole national picture might even change within week to week.
Oh, and it has so far. It did this weekend, and it will continue to. You know, Baylor is out more or less, or at least for the moment seems out. TCU, Stanford, teams get beat.
Yeah.
And other teams step up. So, you know, right now I think we're looking like you're not going to have a Pac-12 team. The Big 12 looks good, whoever emerges, and that may come down to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and Bedlam for the title since they don't have a championship game. I think the Big 10 looks very good, whether it's Ohio State, which has a couple of tough games left, maybe even 3 tough games left, or Iowa or Michigan State. Whoever comes out of there is probably looking good. And if Clemson wins out, they're certainly in. If Alabama wins out, they're certainly in.
And how much weight will the championship games have when they come to the playoff picture? Because some will not play in a championship game. So how much will that weigh in for the committee?
It should weigh more. You're playing a big game at the end of the year against a ranked type opponent generally. You know, I think the Florida's going to be ranked if Alabama's in there. If Clemson gets, you know, North Carolina, that's a ranked team. Those are good teams, and they're big games. And the conferences that don't have that, I think they're playing one less game and one less big game. So I think that does matter. Notre Dame, same thing.
And another interesting thing that happened this weekend, Arkansas kind of threw themselves back in the SEC West mix. What did you think of that?
They're weird. They did the same thing last year. You know, they didn't look like a really, really good team for a long time. And I think Brett Bielema is a good coach. He keeps his teams, you know, some teams kind of unravel when things don't go well early.
He keeps them fired up.
Yeah, he does. And he makes a lot of noise and he jumps up and down. And, you know, he's a strange guy, but he's the kind of guy you want to play for probably. So I'm not totally surprised. They play physical football, and a lot of teams aren't built to take on physical football, especially as you get later and later in the year. And he seems to, you know, if he can get the first part of the season down,
yeah, he's got to work on
one
that
of these
part.
days they may have the season that everybody expected him to have this year.
He's got the press conference part down.
Absolutely.
Quickly before we go to break, what games should viewers keep an eye on this week?
Well, for Alabama fans, of course, LSU and Ole Miss is important because if LSU wins, then Alabama automatically goes to the SEC title game because of the tiebreaker with Ole Miss that could come in if Alabama had 2 losses. Alabama loses to Auburn, it won't matter if they go to the SEC title game. But you've got that. You got some Big 12 games. You've got let me find my notes here. You got Mississippi State and Arkansas. You got Ohio State, Michigan State, Baylor, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma TCU. So those are all interesting games, but mostly it's kind of cupcake weekend in the SEC.
So still full games out of the SEC to be watching. Well, that's all the time we have right now with Tommy, but he'll be back later on in the show to answer your questions. Stay with us. Welcome back to Tide Sports TV. We tape live at Will Hagen's every Monday night at 6 p.m. Now it's time to go inside the Tide, brought to you by Ziegler Meats. Joining me from the Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com, Aaron Suttles. Aaron, welcome back to the show. What would you say was the most impressive stat of the game? Alabama's 9 sacks, or the fact that Alabama did it basically with the defensive line and without even blitzing at all?
Yes.
Not blitzy?
Yeah. No,
All of it, all the above?
both. The fact that they got 9 sacks in the SEC is pretty remarkable. And the fact, I think it's even more remarkable when you look at their performance from a week before, where they shut down the best running back in the country, Leonard Fournette. So basically, they've showed in 2 weeks that you can't run against them, and if you pass against them a lot, you're probably going to get your quarterback on the ground a lot. They're doing it with a lot of different guys. Jonathan Allen now leads the team in sacks with 9. Tim Williams is a guy coming into the season who really hadn't done much through his first 2 years at Alabama, and now is second on the team in sacks with 5.5, and he really only plays on third down. So he's not seeing near as many snaps as some of these other guys. A'Shawn Robinson, Jaron Reed, DJ Petway, Dalvin Tomlinson, the list goes on and on. This defensive line, we've talked about it all year, but it's the best in the country, and they've shown you in back-to-back weeks against LSU, Mississippi State, nationally televised games, why they're the best defensive line in the country.
And Coach Saban said it today, 87 plays. And so he said playing that much, how important it is to have that rotation, which doesn't matter which guy is in, that they can do it.
Yeah.
Now, some other people on the other side would say that's not very fair to have that many great players on one roster.
Yeah, well, you recruit better. If you recruit well enough, you'll have those players. And I thought it was pretty telling. Alabama on their front 7 rotates about 15 guys. LSU, who recruits also at a very high level, rotates 8. So you can see the difference. That's why LSU's defense wore out. Alabama stayed fresh throughout that game. They got 15 guys in their front 7. LSU didn't have the linebacker depth and couldn't rotate as many guys in. If you say it's not fair, well, you got a chance this February to sign a good recruiting class and make it a little more fair.
We were speaking with Cam Sims today, and he just said on the offensive line, you play the same 5 every snap.
Yeah.
And just how draining it is, he knows for the other teams to have to be facing Alabama. He said he understands what it's like for them.
Yeah, and you could sense. I mean, Mississippi State did a really good job stopping the run, except for a couple of times when Derrick Henry broke free on him. But that's a big offensive line. And Cam Robinson at left tackle is huge. Ross Pierce-Baker's playing well, and Ryan Kelly is probably maybe one of the best centers in the country.
He's maybe going to the NFL.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the offense. Is it as good as it was against LSU, or is it as bad as sometimes it seemed against Mississippi State?
Well, it's Mississippi State was basically selling out. They weren't going to allow Derrick Henry to beat them, so they were going to put it on Jake Coker in that offense to pass the ball. And I think the first 5 plays from scrimmage for Alabama's offense were all passes. So Alabama expected that. They were going to try to take what the defense gave them, but they couldn't get anything going. And I think certainly the atmosphere, the environment had a lot to do with it. But they were also really inconsistent. And when they played against LSU, it was clear we were going to run the ball. We weren't going to make a lot of mistakes. Mississippi State said, you're not going to run the ball. We're going to make you pass. And I think you're going to start seeing a little more of that. The difference being, there aren't 60,000 cowbells ringing in your ear that can disrupt you.
Well, I like to be a little bit positive. What about Calvin Ridley? What does he show for some positivity for this offense in the passing game?
Well, he's just an explosive player. I mean, the touchdown pass he caught really should have been held to a 12 to 15-yard gain. And because he's got just blessed athletically, he makes one guy miss, gets a couple blocks, and he takes it all the way for a really long touchdown. You either got that or you don't. Richard Mullaney, God bless him, is not making that play. O.J. Howard's not making that play. Calvin Ridley's got that next level speed and change of directness and quickness. He can make that play, and that's what Alabama needs, a little more of. And I think Nick Saban would have preferred his offense to be more consistent. But he also will take those, what he calls explosive plays when he can get them.
Especially a freshman.
Yeah.
And can we officially declare one of Jen's favorite, Adam Griffith's slump over? Is it over, and what does this mean for Alabama moving forward?
Well, he did miss his last attempt. It was blocked. It wasn't his fault. Reggie Ragland didn't seal the edge there, and the free guy blocked it. But, I think he's kicked the ball a lot better. And certainly with his past history, he missed the first 4 to start this season, and people were really down on him. Nick Saban made a point that he wanted his fans to be more positive toward Adam because it's such a mental game. But he's playing a lot better, and to see him do that on the road, especially the first one, was good to see.
And he's going to have a bigger game on the road coming up as well.
Yeah, the site of a really bad memory for Adam Griffin, the kick 6.
I wonder how many times you will have to see that next week. You want to
A
take
lot.
an over-under on that one?
Well, you'll see it a lot, I think, on your side, on the television. I don't know if we'll be writing a ton about it.
Blame the TV people. All right. What younger players do you look forward to seeing against Charleston Southern? We know this is typically a game where they may show other people like Damian Harris or Bo Scarborough.
Yeah. What's good that you didn't ask Nick Saban that question today, because he would have gotten really angry. But you can ask me. I think
So when you take some plays off, who are you putting in?
Exactly. I think it's really important, given the injury to Kenyon Drake, that Damian Harris and Bo Scarborough, I think they need the experience of playing in a game, whether it's Charleston Southern or Vanderbilt, whoever you're playing. They need that in-game experience. Most people think of running back, and they think it's a really simple position to play because you get the ball and you run it. Well, there's a lot more that goes into that. You have to understand pass protection, understand how to pick up a blitz. Most of these guys, if you're that level of a Damian Harris or Bo Scarborough, you didn't block one time in high school, ever. You were never asked to block. You were asked to run the ball. So there's a lot that goes into it that these guys have to figure out. I mean, Nick Saban said it basically took Derrick Henry 2 years, his first 2 years on campus, to become a complete back. TJ Yeldon was pretty blessed. He was a complete back from pretty much the moment he stepped on campus. So I think it's important that Damian and Bo get some carries. So if Alabama needs them in the Iron Bowl, in the SEC championship game, or college playoff, they can have some experience.
And where does this team need to improve the most as they head down the final stretch of the season?
I think it's penalties. Penalties have been the bugaboo of this team all year, and that's a lot of them are just mental mistakes. Not keeping your focus, whether it's breaking the offensive huddle with 12 men, delay a game, holding. They've had way too many penalties this year, and you can tell it's weighing on Nick Saban. When he's asked about it, he doesn't have a solution. It's just guys doing what they're supposed to do, and it's really driving him crazy, you can tell. So I think that, and I think the offensive line's got to be more consistent. So some weeks they look dominant, other weeks it doesn't look like the same group. So between the penalties and offensive line, I think those are the two areas. If they shore that up, man, Alabama's going to be really, really difficult to beat.
It does look like Cam Sims is more healthy now, though, than he did a couple
Cam
of weeks
Robinson?
ago. Cam Robinson,
Yeah, he is. And Nick Saban said it. He's won Coach's Offensive Player of the Week twice. He's coming off, so obviously the bye week did him a world of good. He was basically playing with some injuries that they're not going to make excuses for him, but he played through them, and that bye week, I think, really, really helped him.
And Coach Saban got a little sentimental today, bringing up that this is senior day, the final game at Bryant-Denny Stadium for this class. He says that they haven't accomplished exactly what they wanted to. They were there for a national championship, but they were not a big contributor to that.
Right.
Besides, practice. What would it mean for this team to go out and get to the playoffs and kind of set that as their legacy to win a national championship?
That's what these guys came in at the beginning, when Alabama was winning championships, so they want to win on while they're playing. Certainly they got the SEC championship, which means a lot last year, but you kind of measured at Alabama, especially recently, by putting your name as a national champion, and guys like Reggie Ragland, Ryan Kelly, guys like that. That's the ultimate goal.
And that's kind of the expectation they're brought into as well. Well, that's all the time we have right now for Inside the Tide, but when we come back, we answer your questions that you posted on the Tidesports.com message board, so stay with us. Welcome back to Tide Sports TV. It's now time to answer your questions that you posted on the Tidesports.com message board, and you can, of course, leave us a question there or tweet it to us at Tide Sports TV. The first question, where does Derrick Henry rank among running backs in the Nick Saban era at Alabama? We'll start with Aaron.
Well, you got to start with Mark Ingram, right? He's a Heisman Trophy winner. Certainly what Trent Richardson did in college didn't turn out in the pros, but in college was very productive back, set the single-season rushing record at Alabama. But after that, you got to look at it. What Derrick is doing this year is pretty special.
He's a great guy to watch. He's having a great season. He may be having a Heisman season, one season. Mark Ingram was more than one season as the guy. Yeldon was more than one season as the guy. So talent-wise and production-wise this year as the guy, as good as any, maybe better than any of the others, but it's still one season.
Are you trying to make a case for him to come back next year?
That'd be fun. I'd like covering him another year. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see.
Let's go to the follow-up question. Does Henry have the Heisman locked up? Tommy?
Nobody has a Heisman locked up yet. It's late in the season, but big dogs hunt late, and whoever makes, if he finishes out the way he's been playing, I think he'll win it. He'll have a real good chance to, but he's got to continue to do that, and then we see what other players do.
And just a week ago, Leonard Fournette had it locked up.
Yeah, absolutely not. And more than any other, recently, the Heisman is kind of what have you done for me lately. Derrick will not have the main stage this week against Charleston Southern. You look at a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, he's got Michigan State, Michigan, and Iowa, potentially in the Big Ten championship game. And then Baker Mayfield coming out of nowhere at Oklahoma. It really is kind of what have you done for me. Although Derek will have a shot. You get a very good Florida defense, and then if he takes advantage of playing against a not very good Auburn defense.
And Aaron and I touched on this in the last segment, so I'm going to actually give this question to you, Tommy. With Kenyon Drake out the last few weeks, how does Damian Harris and Bo Scarborough stack up as backups to Henry, and what do you expect to learn about their roles this upcoming week?
It's going to be interesting. I'm glad we get to talk about Bo Scarborough because nobody ever asked about Bo Scarborough. There seems to be a fascination with him, probably because he was a great high school player. He looks like the Incredible Hulk. He's got lots and lots of talent, but he hasn't had much of a chance to show it on a college field yet. And this week in particular, both the backup running backs really need to show what they can do because one of them at least is probably going to get some real time down the stretch. And we expect Drake to be back in a few weeks, but we don't know if he's going to be back 100% in a few weeks. So maybe, postseason before we see him.
And hate seeing him go down especially. What do you make of Tony Brown's move to safety, and can he contribute there? Aaron?
Well, yeah, and with the injury to Minkah Fitzpatrick, we don't know how long he'll be out. Tony filled in, I thought, pretty well. Broke on one ball in particular. He maybe could have returned for a touchdown if he had held on to the ball. And one thing we know about Tony Brown, if you've been watching it all this season, on special teams, he really likes to hit people. So safety seems to be a pretty good position for him.
Good fit. Tommy, you want to add anything?
Yeah, and Alabama has been using cornerback-type guys at safety. So I think he's being groomed possibly for a spot like that. And I don't think, everybody that's that type player wants to be a cover corner, a lockdown corner, and he may yet be that. But this is a way to get on the field and show what he can do, and I think it's a good move for him and for the team.
And it's working so far. Is the use of the pistol and shotgun formations part of the reason Alabama has so many negative plays?
I don't think so. I don't think it's a formation thing. Alabama used the pistol since Jim McElwain got to Alabama. Alabama's been using the shotgun since before Nick Saban got to Alabama. Not as frequently, but, last year they were in shotgun probably more than this year. I think it's breakdowns in the line. I think you got a bunch of guys who are mostly grading 90%, but if one of them has a breakdown on first down and one of them on second down and one of them on third down, that doesn't mean they're all going to be on the same page all the time. And I think it's starting to get a little better, but I don't think they have the kind of support blocking from the tight ends and the H-backs that they're used to getting. When you had a guy like Michael Williams who has started a game or two at tackle in the NFL playing tight end, you're getting a little more blocking support on the second level and taking linebackers out and things like that. I don't think they're getting quite as much of that this year.
Yeah, I'll say this. The last 2 weeks when coincidentally Cam Robinson has played his best, we've seen fewer of those allowed tackles for losses. So I think the tackle play just hasn't been great this year. But now that it's getting a little better, we've seen, that not be as big of a problem the last 2 weeks.
All right, switching gears for a minute. What about Avery Johnson's debut as Alabama's head coach, and how impressive was the turnout for the first home game? And let me mention that it was the largest since 1989.
I think it was really impressive on the part of the fans to buy up that many tickets. I know some of the old guard that holds tickets that are in the middle didn't all show up, but so many more people bought tickets. There is excitement about basketball in Tuscaloosa, and we'll see what Avery Johnson can do, but he can sure sell a program.
Yeah, you're talking about the Friday night before a road football game for that many people to come out. And look, a lot of it is just, as Tommy mentioned, a lot of excitement about Alabama basketball, about maybe they don't win a lot, but they're going to be fun to watch, a different style of basketball that's enjoyable to the eye to watch. So I think the fans wanted to come out and just let them know, let Avery know that they were behind him.
And how about the women's team putting up over 90 points? Well, that's all the time we have for tonight. Next week, we are going to be covering the Iron Bowl, so we expect great questions from you on the TideSports.com message board, or you can tweet them at us at TideSportsTV. Thanks for joining us.